I was standing in the cul-de-sac by my house recently, chatting with one of my neighbors, watching my girls play. It was a beautiful sunny day. We were just enjoying the day, and I hadn't seen him in a while, so we were kind of catching up, talking about our summers. And he was sharing with me how he'd had 4 weeks off of work and how it was just an incredible time with his family. He really enjoyed it, and he enjoyed it so much that he really started telling everybody that he was retired and that he wasn't going back to work. And then the conversation kind of took a funny turn. We started really laughing, and I wanted to share a little bit of that with you. But before we do, I'm Jason Alcott. If we haven't met yet, I am the author of the upcoming book, The Sewing Principle. If you haven't taken a moment to hit the thumbs up button or the subscribe button below, please do. It really helps to get this message out there to uplift and encourage others. Appreciate it. So back to this conversation with my neighbor. We're chatting. He's telling me about his summer, how he had 4 weeks off, and he told everybody he retired. And he said, if I just figured if I believed it enough and if I spoke it into existence, that it had to become true. And I'm kind of going, yeah, okay, over a 4 week time period. And then he said, the only reason it didn't come true is because my wife didn't believe as much as I did. So we're laughing about that. And obviously he's back to work and whatnot. And I said, we probably didn't come true because you didn't put it on a vision board. And we laughed some more. And now, why did we laugh at that sort of statement? Why did we laugh at this idea of believing in something and speaking it into existence, vision board, putting it in front of you? Because I think at our core, we know that as important as those things are, having the vision for what it is that you want, but something like that over a 4 week time period, just going from working full time to all of a sudden being retired over 4 weeks, it's a bit unrealistic. It's not something that's going to happen. It's like a silver bullet if you won the lottery. Those things, that's not real, right? So we know that in our psyche, and then so we kind of laughed about it in this conversation, and it was really funny because I kind of joked about it and said, yeah, if you just have had a vision board, it probably would have come true. Now, if we'd been having that conversation back in 2000 or mid 2000s, 2006, around the time, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there was a documentary that came out and it was called The Secret. And it was really sort of this height of this idea around the mid 2000s that if you just believed in something enough, if you just kind of focused on something enough, had this sort of idea of the law of attraction in your life, that you could sort of believe things into becoming true. And it was sort of a very prevalent thought at the time. It's still a prevalent thought today. But if you could just believe it into being, it could come true. Fast forward to today, and the thought process isn't really as prevalent. And if anything, I feel like there's sort of this pendulum when we think about, success and success habits or how we achieve success. And on one end, maybe there's this idea of believing in something so much that it can become true. And then on the other end, it's purely focused on the actions or the habits or the process of how we actually achieve that. And we sort of teach and learn, but it feels like it's on a little bit of a pendulum. So we're going from, well, if you just believe it, you can make it come true. Or if you swing all the way to the other end where it's like, well, the belief or the vision or the goals aren't even as important. And now if you just work on the process, that if you just do the process, if you just do the habits, then you can sort of achieve quote unquote success. And it looks as if it's an either or conversation. And I'm kind of thinking through this and looking at this and going, no, it's not either or. They both have to be working together. They both have to come together. A really popular book, I've talked about it before, right now is Atomic Habits, and it really focuses on this idea of, processes and habits, and, we succeed at the level of our systems. And I think that there's a lot of truth to that, but it's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of we achieve to the level or belief in our dreams. And I think now when we look at it, and because we have such a focus on a process and habits in our current, where we are today in 2021, the vision, people with vision and the vision that God puts in your life becomes even more important because we've sort of swung in that direction. We laugh at this idea or joke about this idea of having a vision board, or we joke about this idea of just believing in something. And it needs to be a healthy mix. We need to be able to tie our vision that God has given us into actionable steps, but they need to be able to work together. They need to mesh together. Another example of this pendulum sort of swinging, a friend of mine and a great leader here in the Vancouver area by the name of Peter Reek commented in one of my videos recently, and he said, chop wood, period, carry water, period, and the process is greater than the results. And I think that I totally agree with him. The process and the journey is incredibly important. We can often lose sight of that, but it's this sort of prevalent thought of our current time where it's like we put more and more emphasis on the work habit than we do on the goals. And I think in this particular moment, we need to be able to pause and say, no, it's not an and or. Like, I've been looking at it going, well, is one better than the other? Is the goal more important than the process, or is the process more important than the goal? And I don't think it's one or the other. I think they both have to work together. I think both are integral parts of actually living out what God has called you to, because without God's vision in your life, without somebody with a dream or a goal, somebody saying, here's where we're headed, or here's where I'd like you to be headed, God speaking that into your life, then you can have all the process and habits that you want, but eventually you're going to hit a rough spot. And what's going to help carry you through? What's going to actually pull you through that is going to be the vision or the goal that you're going after. So it can't just be the vision, or it can't just be the process or the habit. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be tied into a destination. I think you know this to be true as well. I mean, God gives us a vision, and that vision right now, especially if we're looking at this swing of teaching and the pendulum swing of teaching between sort of belief and goals and process, now if we've got more of a focus on process and habits, then coming back to that vision and that God's vision in your life actually becomes even more important, to not lose sight of that. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke about the story of Joseph and how he reacted to the various things that happened as he went through life. Interesting to note in the story of Joseph, that entire story of Joseph's life starts with God giving him a vision. And now, I'm not a biblical scholar, and I won't speak to this for sure, but I wonder, how much did God's having this incredible vision and giving this vision to Joseph for his future life, even if he didn't fully understand it at the beginning, but giving Joseph that vision, how much did that vision carry him as he went through the ups and downs in his life, as he went through being sold into slavery, as he went through being wrongfully convicted of a crime and sent to prison? How much did God's vision actually pull him through those difficult times and allow him to react favorably? I think this is the same for us as well. So whether you know God's vision and call for your life already, or maybe you don't, let's start with if you didn't. But if you don't fully understand or fully see God's vision for your life, which I would argue that no one can fully see that vision, but God gives us glimpses of it. But if you haven't got that glimpse of what God's calling you to yet, then I would encourage you to dive into the process, encourage you to dive into the habits that are going to allow you to discover that vision. That's reading in your Bible, that's speaking and praying with every day and having those conversations with God and allowing Him to speak into your life, being part of community. All of these things that sort of allow God to open up vision in your life. But then if you are on the spectrum or the side of the equation where God has given you a vision, a glimpse of what He's calling you to in your life, then I would argue that you need to actually do the same kind of thing. You've got the vision, make sure that you continue to pray into that, speak into that, and recognize that. But you need to be able to work that all the way back, whatever that vision is, to what's the actionable step that I can take today, tomorrow, to move me towards that vision? What are the actionable steps that are going to actually allow that to come to fruition in my life? And if we can't actually work that back to an actionable step and you're just receiving God's vision and just believing for it to come true, then I'm going to argue that it's just going to sit on the shelf and be a really great vision board for you, but it's not actually going to become true. We need to be able to have that all the way come back to that actionable step. But what's going to carry you through when you take those actionable steps and you hit the hard spots, when you hit the tough spots, is actually the fact that God's given you that vision, that He's called you to that He's going to carry you through the tough times, that He's going to lift you up and actually allow you to walk into His vision for your life because He wants you to do it, and you're taking the actionable steps to make that come true. So when I was thinking about this video, my title in my mind was, sort of goals versus habits, sort of this battle of one or the other. But I think what it is actually more of an equation. And it's goals plus habits equals the results, equals the success, equals God's vision coming to light in our life or in the lives of others as He calls us. So if you can take that this week, be encouraged by that this week. It's the vision plus the habits. It's the goals plus the habits and the processes all coming together that are going to lead us toward the direction that God has called us to. Thank you so much for watching this week. I love you guys. I appreciate you, and I look forward to sharing with you again next week.